One thing that people are saying about the sequel trilogy is that it's very disjointed. And I would actually agree with that. I love the sequel trilogy. But because the baton was passed from JJ to Ryan and then back to JJ, a lot of that got muddy, right? But you know what's worse than a disjointed story? A boring story. And that is what we have with The Phantom Menace. For whatever reason, George decided that a lot of his direction for characters would be act like a robot or speak in a monotone voice. That was the direction that he gave to Natalie Portman. All the Jedi are supposed to be stoic, non emotional. Doesn't create for very interesting cinema. The taxation of trade routes. This argument that this movie is made for children? No, that does not hold up at all. Nobody wants to know about intergalactic politics and blockades and all this stuff. I mean, politics are certainly a broad part of the overall Star Wars story. Like in the original trilogy, we always knew that there were opposing political forces at play in a larger scope, but it never superseded the human element between our characters. That is what needs to be the central focus of any storytelling, is how is our protagonist and antagonist dealing with these things. All right, so that's just the beginning rant. As I go through this too, I'm going to kind of be asking the question, what was George Lucas trying to do here? Did he accomplish it? And what makes this movie not work? Because that's my argument today, is that this movie doesn't work. And right off the bat, if anybody wants to share their reasons why they think this movie doesn't really work as well, I would love to hear them. Is it Jar Jar's fault? Is it the kid who plays Anakin's fault? I don't know. I think a lot of the fault might rest on one person's shoulders, and I think that person's name is George Lucas. Let's go ahead and get started. Fingers on the trigger. I'll count you down. I'll say 3, 2, 1, play. If anybody wants to go ahead and watch with me. I see people joining. Not a lot of comments yet, guys. Let me know. What are your thoughts about Phantom Menace? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, and while this is working itself up, go to my YouTube channel. The Return of the Jedi commentary just went up this morning. So put in YouTube, Show Me Cinema. You're going to have to probably filter it to search for channels, because until I get my 1,000 subscribers or whatever, my channel's not going to be brought up there to the tippity top. But one day, my friends, I will be at the tippity top. There's some comments. Hey, Will, so good to see you, buddy. Eric, thanks for the compliment. I loved your lives last night. I hope those cookies were delicious. Episode 2 is worse for Jason. I hear that more and more and more. Mike, thanks for being here, man. It's been way too long, in fact. Jason's a big fan of the pod racing. I like the pod racing. I think it could have been cut down by 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. It's a little long. All right, here we are. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The title confused me like crazy when I was a kid. I thought that it referred to Darth Vader, because I think Phantom of the Opera. I think of a mask, which is why then I would think of Darth Vader's mask. Menace, I think of Dennis Menace. I think of a kid. Anakin was a kid in this movie. It wasn't until years later that I was like, oh, it's referring to Palpatine. Got it. And in this opening crawl, we hear all about, the matter of the blockade, trade routes, really thrilling stuff, let me tell you. Congress of the Republic. And endless debates. The Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict. Okay. Well, you're going to try to make it as long as you can. Buddy, you're a true friend. I know you're not a fan of the prequels. Douglas likes the Phantom Menace the most. Props to you, my man. You should ship me some of those cookies, Eric. Okay, so here we are with the two Jedi. Gosh, so when this came out in 99, I was 13 years old. And I thought right off the bat, something feels weird. Like, I still like all these movies. Don't get me wrong. Even though I don't think the prequels are good, I still love all these films in the Skywalker saga. Um, and Rogue One and Solo. But I think part of that is like I allow myself to kind of play in the sandbox that George Lucas created, and I have, my own personal head canon for the things that I don't like. But back in the day, 1999, I remember watching this, not really knowing who these two hooded figures were. Um, and as we start the film, it's already kind of like walking through mud. It's a very slow paced beginning, which is very different than A New Hope, which right off the bat, we got a big super battle in space. And even Empire, we're on the ice planet. Whoa, he's on a tauntaun lizard, and then a wampa monster hits him up the side of the head. Here we got two guys in these monk uniforms walking through a conference room discussing negotiations. So a little bit of a slow start. And the film just never quite gets up to the pace that it should in order to keep people's interest. All right, so these aliens who run the Trade Federation are the Neimoidians. And these are guys in actual costumes, in big suits. In fact, the one in the red, his name is Newt Gunray. He's kind of the leader. He is played by the same actor who is on the Jedi Council with the weird double brain thing. His name's Ki-Adi-Mundi. Anyway, same actor, playing both roles. Good old Liam Neeson. So Liam, like most of the cast of this movie, did not read a script before signing on. I mean, why would you, right? Like, you hear that they're doing a Star Wars movie and George Lucas offers to give you a role. No brainer. Yeah, I'm going to sign up for that. Natalie Portman apparently had never seen a Star Wars movie in her life, which is kind of crazy. But she signed up for it too. And Ewan McGregor actually was a big fan. So here Darth Sidious is talking to Newt Gunray. And he's saying, go kill the Jedi or whatever. At this point, actually, we don't officially get confirmation from this trilogy that Sidious and Palpatine are one and the same until Episode 3. So it was almost like Lucas was trying to trick everybody that Sidious was not Palpatine, but we all knew, right? Battle droids. What are your thoughts on battle droids, everybody? Are they better or worse than stormtroopers? I think their accuracy is about the same, but they do seem to get chopped up far more than stormtroopers. Am I right? So Ewan McGregor is actually related to one of the actors from the original trilogy. If you remember who Wedge Antilles is, one of the rebel pilots that is Luke's buddy, he is the uncle to Obi-Wan, to Ewan McGregor. And a lot of this stuff was shot on a soundstage in London. Right off the bat, we see lightsaber battles that are a little bit more intense than perhaps we did in the classic trilogy. I do remember always liking this chopping a hole through the door, the slow cutting out of the door here that Qui-Gon does. So these costumes that the Neimoidians are in, they were really painful to wear. Super heavy, just weighed down on your shoulders, and of course, very hot. So some of the actors who were originally cast to be the Neimoidians dropped out because of it. Here's the destroyer droids, or the droidicas. Force Run. A lot of this stuff was actually shot at the very end of the shoot, where the Neimoidians are on their bridge. That was like the final shot, apparently, which is odd that it was so reversed when George put it all together. Going back through these comments, Will, you fall asleep almost every time you watch this movie? Yeesh. The only movie that I have fallen asleep through multiple times is Stranger Than Fiction with Will Ferrell, which is funny because my wife loves that movie. And here is Natalie Portman. So the costume design for her is heavily influenced by like kabuki Japanese theater, but that's about where the performance ends because Will saw it 3 times and never made it to the underwater scenes. Bro, that's like 15 minutes in, man. Um, yeah, George used a lot of different influences from different cultures and stuff in this movie and in the costume design. Now, the rest of her performance is odd to me though, because her vocal patterns aren't similar to kabuki theater in any way. And I'm a theater nerd, so I know most of you probably aren't familiar with that, but it's a lot of slow movement and then loud vocals and stuff like that. And with Padme, George just said, make it a deeper voice and give it an accent that's not your own. And we got a very robotic kind of performance out of her, unfortunately. That's a problem with a lot of these characters. I know, right? A lot of these characters are just not relatable. They don't relate to one another. They don't relate well to the audience. And a lot of the cinematography and blocking in scenes like this is very static. Everyone's sitting. And again, this goes right into my argument for the sequel trilogy being far superior, is that specifically JJ's films, the way he works his camera is so there's so much movement that keeps you interested, that wants you to follow the characters along as they run through a corridor. And I'll break that down once we get to Force Awakens. There's a great shot at the beginning of Force Awakens where the camera's just panning from one group of characters to another seamlessly. And here, unless it's an action sequence, we just get a lot of sitting around. All right, so the Trade Federation is now landing on the planet of Naboo. And they are creating an act of war because they're just so mad about these taxes. I mean, I can understand that. So a lot of this forest scene stuff was shot about, I think, 15 miles outside of London, in a forest they found there. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Jar Jar Binks. Everybody, what's your favorite Jar Jar Binks line? I know you all have opinions about Jar Jar, but it's interesting because poor guy has been so crucified that it's almost reached this point where it's like, all right, who cares anymore? It is what it is. It didn't work. It's an easy target, right? So I'll probably won't talk about it a whole lot. Although one thing I do want to mention is how much grief the actor went through. I mean, this poor guy, he put his heart and soul into this performance. And again, a lot of the things that don't work with Jar Jar are George Lucas's fault and not Ahmed's fault. Ahmed Best was the performer in the Jar Jar suit and the voice of the character, and he got death threats. He got stuff like lists of ways that Jar Jar or Ahmed should die. And that's the type of thing that I'm like, hey, y'all, it's a movie. Okay? You're allowed to have passionate feelings about these movies, but personal attacks on the creators, no. So I feel for him. I feel for Jake Lloyd, the kid who played Anakin as well. And I don't think his performance is any good either. But that kid was bullied mercilessly, and he quit acting completely. Is Jar Jar Binks a Sith Lord? Who on the internet started that rumor? Ugh, these people making a living off of these crazy headlines. It's all right. I'm trying to do the same thing. No, Samuel. Do you go by Samuel? Jar Jar Binks is not a Sith Lord. That is just silly. I mean, I do actually kind of like it because it is such an outrageous thing that it gets people talking. To position the camera to view the movie and your commentary at the same time. It's a good question, Stephen. I don't believe so. Also, I'm already running into issues with copyright stuff. Every time I try to post a new video on YouTube, they're like, are you trying to broadcast something that is not yours? I'm like, this is fair use. I'm just doing a commentary. And they eventually let me do it. However, if I did the video and the audio at the same time, I don't think they would be too happy about that. But this is going up on YouTube, this commentary. So if you want to watch it with your own version in the future, recommend that. All right, so all this underwater stuff was, done in a studio for the most part. No worries, Steve. There was some stuff in a tank that they did, like a big water tank. There's footage of Ewan McGregor just goofing around and swimming in the water tank on the soundstage in London. So George has always been known for saying that he doesn't want to repeat himself. And I think it's fair to say that he probably did accomplish that in this movie because a lot of it is very different than the original trilogy. And I think this underwater city really illustrates that. It's kind of a cool design. It's amazing how at the time this CGI was, the best of the best. And I'm sure George Lucas was like, there's no way this isn't going to age well. See, a big problem is that when the frame is made up of more than half of CGI environments and characters, we can't relate to it as much. I said this before when I was doing original trilogy commentaries. Our brain knows what's real and what isn't. So unless you're really good at tricking us, the computer elements to it don't resonate in the same way. So the actor who played Boss Nass is the leader here of the Gungan Council, gentleman by the name of Brian Blessed. He's a British actor who's done some stuff, and apparently he's the voice of Clayton in Tarzan. So thanks for the like, Dalton. So for all you big Tarzan fans out there, Boss Nass, Clayton, one and the same. So Qui-Gon used his divine influence to get a bongo from Boss Nass to get to the surface of Naboo and warn the Queen. And of course, Qui-Gon's got a bleeding heart and decides to help out Jar Jar.
What is to become of Jar Jar Binks? He seemed to be huge.
One of the problems with the film is that there really isn't a clearly defined main character. And this is an idea that's been thrown out there for a long time. It's not original to me, but I absolutely agree. Is it Obi-Wan? Is it Qui-Gon? Is it Anakin? This is Anakin's trilogy. It's about how he became Darth Vader. Is he the main character? Could it be Padme? Is Padme the main character? Is Jar Jar the main character? I think it should have been Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I think the best argument for what George was doing is probably Qui-Gon. He is kind of the only one that's there from beginning to end. Because there's a big chunk of the middle of the movie that Obi-Wan is just not in. So we're really following Qui-Gon's journey. Would have been a stronger choice to go with a character we already know, Obi-Wan Kenobi. But water on the bridge now. So here we see the Bonga going through the planet core. And we have our first big CG water monster. I love Ewan McGregor's face in that shot while Jar Jar's rambling. He's just like, okay, dude, whatever you say. And here's an even bigger fishy fish. Is there always a bigger fish, though, Qui-Gon? That's not even a fish, man. That thing, do you see the deltoids on that beast? All right, so back to space. Here we are with the Trade Federation's freighter, chatting with Sidious again. Ian McDiarmid, the same guy who plays the Emperor in Return of the Jedi and in the Rise of Skywalker, continues the role here. He's actually aged into his role at this point because remember, he was in his 20s during Return of the Jedi. So now he's in his 40s or 50s or something. I don't know exactly, but more age appropriate than he was back then for sure. And in case there wasn't enough big fish stuff before, we added another round of fish. Boy, do I love fish. That's what I needed from the original trilogy. More fish. Yeah, I think Lucas he was never a great director in the first place. So once he got all of this tech, like CG power, these visual effects and technology caught up to him, he just kind of got distracted. And so the actors, they'd be on set needing encouragement from him, needing direction from him. And he didn't know how to give that. Even his old direction, which was faster and more intense, which he kept giving to Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, seemed to disappear because none of these performances are fast or intense. Everybody is slow, methodical, robotic. Granted, it had been 22 years since he directed. 22 years. So he's pretty rusty. And like I said, he was never a good director to begin with. He's a good storyteller, like big picture type of guy. All right, so here comes the Trade Federation to really take over the city of Theed. Theed is the name of the city here in Naboo, where the Queen is reigning. And then there was a scene here that got cut. So after they come up out of the water, there was a whole bit where there's a waterfall behind them, and they about get sucked down the waterfall. And then at the last second, Ewan McGregor shoots out his little grappling gun, total Bruce Wayne style, and pulls them back to safety. So all this stuff in this Naboo Theed Palace was shot in Italy. It's a name. I have the name of the building here somewhere. I'm probably butchering this, but Regia di Caserta in Caserta, Italy. Haven't been there, but beautiful location. Of course, this stuff outside on these steps is mostly digital. And spoilers, by the way, Padme Amidala has a decoy. Woo! What a big reveal. George Lucas he had to sneak another big reveal in this movie and thought that that would be a good one. So I believe at this point, the real Padme has already changed into her handmaiden costume. I'm gonna have to wait till there's a closer shot, but I'll keep you posted. Good old Liam Neeson. See, there's a lot of strong actors in this. It's just George didn't give him anything to work with. I do like the costumes for the handmaidens. I like a lot of the costumes in here. All those security officers look pretty cool. Okay, yeah. So the decoy is currently in the queen's wardrobe and acting as the queen. And you'll see Padme on her side coming up here in this shot here in the hangar. So the real Padme is to the right. And I think she may even have a line where she says something like, "We'll be brave." The girl who plays the decoy, I think the character's name is Sabe, is none other than Keira Knightley of Pirates of the Caribbean fame. Yep. Natalie is on the right, Keira Knightley is on the left. Keira Knightley was a big Star Wars fan, uh, but was discouraged by her parents to audition because her parents were like, "You don't need that kind of drama in your life." Because of course, a lot of these cast members experienced a lot of hate and whatnot. But Keira Knightley auditioned anyway, and I think she had a pretty good time, but she was in a lot of pain with the costumes. I never came across anything about Natalie complaining about the costumes, but Keira would cry after having to wear those huge headdresses for so long. Whoa! William says whoa. I don't know what he says whoa about. Another funny thing though is when the two girls were on set in their full costume and makeup, people would confuse them all the time. There's like a story about Keira Knightley's mom being on set and not being able to distinguish which one was which. Ewan McGregor, there's a clip of him selecting his lightsaber, and he was like, "This is the best day ever." He says something like, "I kept coming to set every day, wondering when I was going to be able to pick out my lightsaber, and today's the day." And they have like a box of 6 or 7 different lightsaber hilts there. All right, so our heroes are all escaping Naboo in the Naboo starfighter and trying to get past the blockade and head to Coruscant, where the Republic is, the Senate is. So this guy who is flying the starship, his name is Rick Oli. And every time I say his name, I think of the advertisement for Rick Oli, like the cough drop stuff. Didn't know about Keira Knightley. Yeah, man. Keira Knightley plays the handmaiden. But only in this movie. There's a different handmaiden who acts as a decoy in Attack of the Clones. R2-D2, ladies and gentlemen. So here's a question for y'all. Does R2-D2 remember who Anakin is in the original trilogy? I think so. I like to think, I've said this before, I like to think that R2 knows way more than we give him credit for. Yay, they got past the blockade. Barely an inconvenience. Anybody watch that guy? He's funny. It's the Screen Rant guy. All right, so the ship is damaged. They can't get all the way to Coruscant to tell people about the invasion. So where are they going to stop? Tatooine. Tatooine. Yeah, the only movie that Natalie Portman had really done before this that was big was Mars Attacks. I don't know if anybody's a fan of Mars Attacks. I'm sure there's got to be some sort of subculture on the internet who is a big Mars Attacks group. Hi, Kurt. How's it going, man? Thanks for the like. All right, and pretty soon we have the appearance of the one and only Darth Maul. Look at that guy. He's a good guy. He's only got 3 lines in the whole movie, but he's a good guy. Apparently, that role was originally going to be played by Benicio del Toro, but he dropped out when he found out that all of Darth Maul's lines got cut. And of course, Benicio ended up showing up in The Last Jedi anyway when he played that hacker character that is a mess. Hot mess. Douglas, are you leaving? You're reacting. You give me a thumbs up? It is good to see R2 again. So the little guy, little person who played R2D2 in the original trilogy is back for most of the prequel trilogy stuff, but he's not in it all the time. And I don't know. From what I understand, when R2 bounces, Kenny is in the suit. Suit? I guess you call it a suit. In the can. So when he bounces or when he sways forward or back, that's Kenny doing his thing. Otherwise, a lot of it is just remotely controlled. All right, so here's Padme undercover as a handmaiden, and she's cleaning up R2. She ain't afraid to get down and dirty. And Jar Jar's just hanging around. My question is like, what? Kurt, these movies are really bad. I can't watch. I refuse to know there's a see you for Rogue One. Kurt, thanks for dropping by. If you really can't stay, I understand, but I do appreciate the heads up. And yeah, come back for Rogue One. I will definitely be doing Rogue One as well. They're bad. So speaking of like them not being super great, things that I would have done. I was gonna finish a thought earlier, but I forget what it was. Definitely keep Darth Maul. Don't let Darth Maul die at the end of the movie, because then Obi-Wan doesn't really have a whole lot to do the rest of the trilogy. I mean, he goes on some like detective work here and there, but if he had this opposing force that he continued to come up against, that would have been very interesting. Also, I'm all about the love triangle dynamic. If he also was in love with Padme, and there was this forbidden love triangle between him and Padme and Anakin, it would just elevate everything and make every conversation. You could play around with how much does the other guy know about his feelings and vice versa. Lots of room there for some cool character moments. What else would I have changed? I really think Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan could have been more defiant against the Jedi. Like in the prequel trilogy, the Jedi are supposed to be at their height, yeah? But they're also losing touch with the Force. And in episode 3, Yoda is reiterating that. He's like, I don't think we can see. Mace Windu says our vision is blurry and all this stuff. I wish George would have gone further with that. Because then it would have made the Jedi overall more interesting instead of just kind of being 12 boring old dudes or aliens. Oh, there's the Jar Jar poop joke. Yay. Nothing makes kids laugh more than people stepping in poop. Poop humor is like, how old do you have to be to start laughing at poop humor? My wife would know the answer to that question. All right, anyway, we're back on Tatooine, trying to figure out a way to fix the ship. Qui-Gon has left Obi-Wan on the ship, so Obi-Wan's never around. Here's Watto, the first junk dealer that Qui-Gon happens to come across. The only junk dealer Qui-Gon happens to come across. I don't know why he doesn't like shop around. Come on, man. So Watto, I just learned that apparently the reason Watto flies is because he's crippled, or like that was the idea that he was crippled, and that's if you notice one of his legs is supposed to be bigger than the other. And here's our first scene with Padme and Anakin, which was also the scene that Jake Lloyd and thousands of other little boys auditioned with. I gotta watch some of this. I agree completely, Jason. In fact, Anakin originally was going to be a 12-year-old boy. And then George decided to bump it down to 9 years old because he wanted the separation from his mother to be more dynamic, I guess. But then the downside of that is that a lot of his participation in the movie was changed because he was so little. Like he couldn't be involved in ways that he originally was going to be. And then to your point, Jason, yeah, we weren't able to build relationships between Anakin and Obi-Wan from the start like we should have. It's wild to see Natalie Portman this young. Here's the pit droids. Hi, Mariah. Thanks for the like. Appreciate that. Yeah, Jake Lloyd really despised doing this scene because he was so tired of doing it for auditions. I mean, the guy had to go through several rounds of auditions that by the time they got around to actually shooting this, he hated it. And of course, like, it's awkward that you're like supposed to have this connection with a girl who's 5 years older than you. You know, Natalie Portman was 14, and he's saying things like, "Are you an angel?" You know, I can see how that would be a little weird for a kid at that time. All right, Qui-Gon tries to use the Force on Watto, but apparently Watto is a Toydarian, which means Jedi mind tricks don't work on him. Kurt, Anakin and Padme should have hated each other at first. Yeah, similar to Solo and Leia. And then they fall in love. I'm open to that. I'm open to that, definitely. I think the more diversity between their relationship and Obi-Wan's relationship, it's just there was a lot of opportunity for character there that George that's not his skill set. George's skill set is visual effects and big picture storytelling. He doesn't write dialogue, he doesn't direct. Unfortunately, at this point, he was surrounded by a lot of yes men, which, you know, who's going to say no to George Lucas, one of the most influential filmmakers of our time? I don't know that I would have had the kahunas to be like, George, that's a terrible idea. Why don't you actually focus on these characters for a second? You know, he did what he wanted. You got to give him credit for that. George has always done what he wants. Oh, one other thought I had that could maybe improve this was uh, more focus on Palpatine. And I know that we're on Tatooine right now as we're watching this. We're nowhere near Coruscant, but if you get a writer like Aaron Sorkin or somebody who's really good at like subtle dialogue, it's fast. I don't know. I mean, Sorkin might not be the best example, but I think if you carefully developed Palpatine's manipulation over the course of these three films, it could have been more than what it was. Because Ian McDiarmid is phenomenal, and he does a lot with very little on the page. All right, so back to Tatooine, though. Here we are walking through the streets. Sebulba gets this fried frog thing thrown in his face from Jar Jar. And we find out that Anakin and Sebulba have a bit of a history because they're both pod racers. Sebulba's alien species is called Doug. He's a Doug, kind of like dog. And I wrote a quote here by George because he had a very funny way to describe Sebulba. Hold up. Oh, George Lucas describes Sebulba's character design as a cross between a spider and an orangutan and a sloth. All right, George. Misa doing nothing. Good old Jar Jar. Jason Guy, thank you for the like, good sir. I also enjoy all your comments about Ray Park and Liam Neeson and the fight scenes and stuff. You got to give the movie that. I mean, they really elevated the lightsaber duels. And of course, John Williams, I think, is one of the other highlights, of course. Any other big things that people are fans of this movie? Or no, mostly all bad? Bueller? Apparently, there was another subplot about Anakin having this friendship with this old woman here. She has a name. I don't remember what it is. But there were a few scenes that were cut where he like goes and says goodbye to her, and uh, they hug goodbye, and she wishes him luck, and so she's gonna miss him. Look at this wind. So that reminds me, there was another big storm on the set of Phantom Menace. So much like the very first Star Wars movie, and much like The Empire Strikes Back, weather was brutal for this production. Uh, on the fourth day, like this huge thunder and windstorm came overnight and destroyed the set. Like 4 months' work of this set here near where Anakin's neighborhood is, I guess. And there's footage online of the producer at the time coming out and looking at it and just saying again and again, this is grim. And you can see everything's just toppled over. And the producer, his name is Rick McCallum. He's just swearing up a storm. Like he's on the walkie-talkie with people calling George and just so mad. And of course, George is like, it's okay. This happened with the first Star Wars. And you know what? It was a massive success. So this is gotta be a good thing. All right, here we are in Anakin's bedroom with C-3PO. Interesting choice to have Anakin be the creator, the maker of C-3PO. It's weird to me. I don't hate it. This is kind of a nice little moment where 3PO and R2 meet for the first time. I'm glad that the droids are both in the prequel trilogy, and if this is the way to do it, so be it. I don't think I would have done it this way, but I'm not infuriated by it. Some people thought it was very convenient, which it is, and everybody knocks on fan service these days. It's such a dirty word, fan service. But I think this certainly classifies as one of them. You tell him, Obi-Wan. All right, so the Queen is getting all these transmissions from Naboo saying things are getting worse, people are dying. And that prop that Qui-Gon has, apparently that was made from like an old razor, like a Gillette razor. Here's Coruscant, the capital city. And here we have Darth Sidious and Darth Maul. This was the first scene shot. So George really did not shoot this in chronological order at all. He started with this random scene with the Sith Lords on Coruscant and ended at the beginning. That was, I think, two of Darth Maul's three lines. So this scene here at the table, a lot of the information I'm sharing with you today is stuff that I pulled from the documentary on the Phantom Menace DVD. The documentary is called The Beginning, right? And there's a lot of cool footage of this scene where George, you can clearly see that he has a little bit of frustration with Jake. Jake is kind of getting distracted, playing with his food, mispronouncing words or messing up lines. And it's very insightful. And in that same documentary, you get to see the top three boys that were considered for Anakin. And one of them is clearly above and beyond the other two. And it's not Jake, it's another kid. And George even says, Jake Lloyd is unpredictable and untrained. And like there's other casting directors in the room that are like, yeah, his lack of training is really concerning. And then they point to the other kid and they're like, this kid knows how to hit the beats. This kid understands acting. And George went with Jake instead. And God bless Jake Lloyd. He needs it. He's had a rough life. He's been bullied a lot, and I would never wish that on anybody. But it's pretty clear that he doesn't have the chops for a lot of this stuff. He's got some moments. Honestly, the stuff with his mom, and I think that's mostly to her credit. Uh, she's a great actress, Pernilla August, who plays Shmi. Oh, I missed the Jar Jar Binks tongue thing, and I didn't even say anything about it. Comedy. All right, so basically here, Anakin's offering to race, win the race, get enough money to help Qui-Gon buy the part for the ship. And he's the only human who could do it because he has force abilities. He is force sensitive. I'm pretty sure they were back on the soundstage for a lot of this stuff inside of the house, though. Yeah, Mom. At one point, there's a scene where Qui-Gon puts his hand on Shmi Skywalker's shoulder. And this really highlights my point that George Lucas doesn't really understand character development, because George was going to cut that. He was like, no, it doesn't seem appropriate for a Jedi to be doing that. And Liam Neeson actually was the one who was like, no, dude, please. Hold on, I've got it written down here somewhere. Neeson says there needs to be an emotional connection between these two characters. So even on set, Liam was like, George, please let there be something between characters. Yeah, that was a misstep for sure with the Jedi. In the original trilogy, we only knew Obi-Wan Kenobi and then Luke to be Jedi and Yoda. Well, we got to see a lot of personality out of all three of those. Here in the prequel trilogy, all the Jedi are just stone cold. Shameless plug as I move this over to the other side of the room. YouTube channel, Show Me Cinema. Yeah, these special effects really don't quite hold up like they should. I, for one, is very happy that they incorporated more puppets and practical effects in the sequel trilogy. Oh, yeah. Did you guys know that Greedo was originally supposed to be in this movie? Ain't no lie. Like a young Greedo. And this scene was shot, and I think you can find it either on Disney Plus or somewhere online. But Greedo and Anakin get into like this fight, and Anakin's like punching him in the face. And Qui-Gon comes by, breaks it up, and he's like, you can't change what people think or something like that. And all of Greedo's friends are like, Greedo, you better be careful, because if you're not careful, you're going to come to a bad end. I'm kind of glad George cut that out because it's a little corny. Going back to fan service. See, that's a legitimate complaint about bad use of fan service. I don't consider fan service to be a dirty word, because who else are you making these movies for? You're making them for fans. The critics have never liked Star Wars. Other than the very first one, they've always been very much against Star Wars. So you might as well make these movies for the people who love them, who are passionate about them. All right. Anyway, this is an important scene here where Qui-Gon says, you know, Anakin definitely has Force abilities. Where's Anakin's dad? Oh, I had a virgin birth. It just kind of happened. And this has been a fairly controversial thing in Star Wars circles. Would be interested to hear any of your feedback. But some debate has been whether or not Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians in Shmi and helped create life. Because there's the line in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine says something about creating life or sustaining life, keeping people from dying. I don't read too deep into that personally. I think the Force, my thought is it was the will of the Force to eliminate the Sith, right? When the Sith are in existence, the Force is out of balance. So the Force willed the Chosen One into existence. Simple as that. If Palpatine did it, manipulated it, I don't know. There's something to be said for Palpatine kind of being this mad scientist type of character, and then they really went that route in Rise of Skywalker. They almost made him like that first scene has a lot of horror elements to it in Rise of Skywalker, like Frankenstein monsters element to it, and I like that. But as far as Anakin's birth, I personally believe that it was the Force's will that he was born. And here we have Jar Jar and more of his comedy, fumbling through the pod race engine. 3PO making a funny comment. Josh, one of the best Weird Al songs. The saga begins. Yeah, that's a great song. Based that he's parodying American Pie. My, this here Anakin guy. Highly recommend that. I bought that album when I was 14. I'm pretty sure. There's a Star Wars community that I'm part of online that is a big fan of Kidster, who is Anakin's best friend. And they're always like, we need more Kidster. Kidster needs an action figure. I think there's even a song online that's like, whatever happened to Kidster? Like, Kidster's probably stuck in some Mos Eisley bar somewhere watching Darth Vader up on the screen being like, I used to know that kid. All right, so Anakin's taking this blood sample because he's got to get down to the bottom of this. How Force sensitive is Anakin? And somehow he's able to forward the blood data to Obi-Wan while Obi-Wan's on the ship. Not really sure how that works entirely. Any fans of midichlorians out there? No? Yes? No? I'll go back to what I said with the original trilogy. I think the Force, the concept of the Force, is more effective the less we know about it. I think when we start to explain it, and this is my problem with a lot of the Clone Wars episodes, is that they try to explain how the Force works. Still like the Clone Wars. I got any Clone Wars fans out there? Anybody caught up with the new season yet? Ahsoka's back. I didn't watch yesterday's new episode when it dropped, but yeah, big fan. Okay, Darth Maul has landed on Tatooine, tracking down the Jedi and the Queen. It's funny that Even though he's only got 3 lines, the actor who is under the costume, Ray, didn't actually give those lines. He gave them on set, but then they were dubbed over by a voiceover artist because Ray Park is Scottish, and I don't think they wanted that type of voice to come out of the Sith Lord. Eric, I think good mystery in general is missing in a lot of storytelling these days. Yeah, certainly in these movies, these earlier movies. I'm trying to think of an example now, Eric, of like really quality mystery and storytelling. Well, Sherlock, if you watch the BBC version with Benedict Cumberbatch, that is a fantastic series. Have you seen that one, Eric? It's really good. So I subscribed to the Star Wars magazine, like the fan club. It was called the Star Wars Insider when I was a kid. And oh yeah, you've seen it. Yeah, Benedict is one of the best. Him and Martin Freeman are a great combo. But not talking about Sherlock. Talking about Star Wars Insider. So I remember getting issue about all the new characters in Phantom Menace, and Sebulba's. By the way, as Watto's showing off this dice, it's so obvious that there's more blue sides than red sides. I think is that the way it is. I don't know. My question was just always, why does Qui-Gon? I guess Qui-Gon knows he's going to use the Force to uh, help him out anyway. But it's like, Watto, you're so sleazy. Like, it's clearly that you are manipulating the system here. You're working with a loaded die. There's Anakin and Padme riding on a pony. I don't know what that beast is that they're on top of. Anybody know? I want to hear some of the more absurd trivia that you guys know. Oh, I never finished my story about Sebulba, though. So in the Star Wars magazine, I remember the character page for Sebulba. He was blown up huge, and it made it look like the character of Sebulba himself was going to be like this giant monster type character. So that's what I was expecting when I went in to go see this movie as a 13-year-old. And then I see Sebulba in real life, and I'm like, he's just like a tiny little lizard dog. I felt lied to. Padme finds out that Anakin has never won a race, and now she's like, "Oh, maybe I don't like you, child." It's awkward. Yeah, back to what Jason said earlier. Anakin should have been older because when he's 9 and she's 14, that age difference makes things very strange. When there's supposed to be a connection there, like, is it romantic or is it a mother-son sort of thing? It's odd. All right, so the guy who's doing the announcing, this two-headed alien, first off, I didn't realize that one of them is speaking an alien language and one of them is speaking basic or English. And one of the voices is the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway? Greg Proops. If there's any big Whose Line Is It Anyway fans, Greg is the one. He's got glasses. He wasn't on all of the episodes like Ryan and Colin were, but kind of curly hair, glasses. Look it up. You'll be like, oh, yeah, that guy. So apparently, originally there was 5 more minutes of introducing pod raisers here. And actually, it looks like some of it has been added back in, where all these guys take a bow. Yeah, this has all been added back in, dude. This was not in the original release. Not a fan of that choice. As I said before, I already think the pod race is like 3 minutes too long. They go like it's one too many laps. Kind of my single complaint about the very first Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, is that the final run on the Death Star could be cut down by a couple minutes. It just loses its momentum after a while. So I was really glad when I found out that they could have made it even longer and they didn't. But now that I'm watching on Disney Plus, I'm like, oh, wait, you added all that crap back in anyway. I don't think it was all added back in. I mean, there was literally like one pod racer that like waves to his family, and then you see his family, and like the announcer's like, they just added a new member to the family. Check out the baby alien. He's gonna grow up and be just like his daddy pod racer. It's just like too much stuff that wastes time, valuable time that could be spent on developing your characters. But I digress. So Bulba, you're a cheater. You're a dirty cheater. So here's a question. If Sebulba walks on his arms, then what does he use his legs for? I suspect he uses his legs as his arms, like it's just inverted. Qui-Gon, you're like the dad I never had. I keep waiting for trivia from you guys. Give me some good Star Wars trivia that I don't know, or an opinion of yours that I don't know. How old were you when you first saw Phantom Menace? Here's Jabba, completely CGI Jabba, just kind of shoehorned in, and he's supposed to have the same assistant there. And there's another hut in the background that I should probably know about, but I don't. And we still haven't started the race. See, okay, real quickly about that little exchange of dialogue there between Padme and Qui Gon. That's an interesting moment where she's challenging him, and she's like, "You shouldn't be doing this. The Queen wouldn't agree to it." And they have a nice little exchange. But the way that it's shot is too far out. It's too wide. We don't get to see really the actors' emotions. What George should have done is just played more with camera angles, done it over the shoulder for one, so you can see the reactions on one actor's face, and then flip it and do it over the camera for the other. This is really simple. I mean, I'm not a cinematographer, I'm an actor, so I don't know a lot of the techniques for being a director of photography, but like this is basic stuff where it'll really, bring the character more substance. And we still haven't started the race. Oh, there's the Warwick Davis. So the little guy next to Watto in the stands is Warwick Davis, who is the gentleman who originated the role for Wicket the Ewok in Return of the Jedi. If you watched Return of the Jedi with me, I mentioned to y'all, I was like, yeah, this guy shows up for a lot of other stuff throughout the prequels. There he is. He's got the crazy hair. He's pointing at the pod race. They really cleaned up Anakin's pod race, though. It looks way shinier than it did before. I do love this guy that gets his pod race blown up, though. Go, Annie, go. Sometimes when they start calling him Annie a lot, I want them to break into like a musical number from Annie, the Broadway show. No? Too weird? Ricky Gervais, yeah. I don't know, Eric. Does he? I have not seen that. Ricky Gervais. What a guy. I do like the British version of The Office, albeit totally different. Oh, the bounty hunter here in the red pants. I don't know if you all caught her. She's watching the pod race from like a balcony of some kind. She is in the Clone Wars. She became a like fan favorite, I guess, for a lot of us nerds who were watching like every frame and picking out all this weird stuff. Her name is Ara Singh. That's how I pronounce it. But yeah, she's got a cool thing. Yeah, check it out, Eric. Let me know if it's true. All right, so we got 10 minutes of pod racing now, y'all. So I may take advantage of just a bunch of random thoughts that I jotted down. Oh, here's some sand people, though. Yay, familiar stuff. See, this is a good idea. Like, I understand it's a challenge to balance keeping with the old and adding new. Old and new, that's the struggle when you revisit franchises. Sand people on Tatooine, good choice. Stick with that. Putting Greedo in there, bad choice. Don't do that. Eric, you're all good. Won't watch it now, but I will go back and watch that link for sure. Check out some Ricky Gervais with Warwick Davis. Warwick's a cool dude. I think I mentioned before, he's done a lot of stuff with fans at conventions over the years and hosted a couple panels and stuff. Yay, more pit droid humor! Hooray! Oh, here's a one funny thing. If you watch the documentary, the beginning about the making of this movie, they talk a lot about the heat of Tunisia. Of course, it's brutally hot. You got poor Ahmed Best in his Jar Jar costume, just like dying, and they showed like at the bottom of the screen, it was 9 a.m., 109 degrees out. And then what was the next thing? Oh, 12 noon, 135 degrees out. I'm just like, that is ridiculous. And not only do you have like your principal actors, like the guy playing Jar Jar, but you have all your background actors, a lot of them wearing masks. And I don't think every background actor has a personal assistant by them with a fan. In fact, I know that's not the case because I've been a background actor on big movie sets, TV sets. I didn't do any movies. And you don't get a personal assistant if you're an extra. You're lucky if you get a meal. No, they actually feed you really good on those sets. That's probably the best part about being a background actor. A lot of the sound design in this segment is pretty impressive, though. So, like the original sound designer Ben Burt for the first three back in the 70s and 80s returned for this and did um, so many different sounds throughout this segment of machines and aliens crying and all this stuff. I think this little bit here where Anakin reaches out with that like magnet pole was also added back in future versions because I mean I'll have to dig up my old VHS copy and find a VCR, but I'm pretty sure that bit was cut and then added in again. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff out there about the machines he used to make Sebulba's pod race sound and Anakin's because they're both very different, very distinct sounds for sure. Sand people, just chaos, just creating chaos. I guess one thing that influenced George to do the pod race scene was Ben Hur. Old movie with Charlton Heston, but there's a very famous chariot scene escaped my brain there for a second. Chariot. I couldn't think of that word. But yeah, and I believe one of the actors died on the set of that chariot scene when they shot that back in the day. Anywho, George pulled that to kind of influence the pod racing scene. But really, it's just kind of show that Anakin has force abilities, that he's a good pilot, and that Luke Skywalker, in fact, inherited that from his father. There were several pod racing games out there. I mean, look at all these extras that had to just sit around in stands and continue to do. I think about this weird stuff that the background actors have to do because I actually did that sort of stuff when I was working in LA. There's the Jawas. Gotta add the Utini in there. Uh, but yeah, like just hours. Like we only see the crowd stand up and cheer for mere seconds, but those dudes were in costume sitting in those bleachers for hours. Also, speaking of sound design, Ben Burt used a lot of crowd noise from the San Francisco 49ers to use for the crowd here. Good job, Anakin. Get smoke in that guy's face. Uh oh. Uh oh. Now Skywalker's in trouble. All right. Well, while Anakin is pressing buttons and plugging things in, I'm gonna try to find some other interesting things. So, on this documentary that I watched, right? Highly recommend it if you can. I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's called The Beginning, all about the making of Phantom Menace. There's a lot of ridiculous quotes that you hear from George Lucas. One of the best ones is Jar Jar is the key to all of this. Um, Going back to how much he prioritized the CGI elements of the film. Like he really thought the movie was going to be made, and then maybe in some ways it was made or broken on that character. What else does he say? He says stuff like, I know that this is going to work. It's going to work because it's impossible. And that goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this commentary about how I think when George set out to make this film, he wanted to push the envelope for digital effects. And he certainly did that. But you see him in the documentary pushing his visual effects artist, and I feel really bad for their supervisor. He's a guy by the name of John Knoll. And you can see him just wrestling with this and just being like, I think at one point he says something like, I know I've always been the tough one to get along with, but we have no way to do this. We have no way to do this, George. And George is like, well, I know. And that's why it's going to work. I just can't imagine the stress on these poor animators trying to basically make the movie from scratch on their own. Saboba lost. Anakin wins. Another thing about the documentary is like there's so much on the technical stuff. Like there's very little mention of plot or screenplay or acting choices. And I think that's just again indicative of where the emphasis was for George in all of this. And Jabba the Hutt fell asleep. What a guy. All these jokes. Padme gives Anakin an awkward hug, and he gets an awkward kiss from his mom. Jake Lloyd, just poor kid, not used to this attention. And a second kiss. God forbid that we see him like actually love affection from his mother. I thought George's whole idea was that it was going to make it really hard for them to separate from one another. That probably could have been something else that we worked on. Yeah, in the documentary too, or somewhere where I was doing research, Ahmed Best, the actor who plays Jar Jar, I mean, he really thought that Jar Jar was going to be a relatable character, and he talks about how the character of Jar Jar is an outsider and how everybody can relate to kind of being on the outside, and how even he himself was an outsider growing up, which is even more heartbreaking when you think about all the death threats and stuff that people sent to him. I mean, this guy, he opened up about this on Twitter like last year, Ahmed Best, and he said that he was going to commit suicide. Um, And the only thing that stopped him from doing so was the fact that he had a son of his own, and he wanted to push through for his kid. So that stuff's just really sad. And like, I love movies. I love Star Wars. I'm passionate about Star Wars. But at the end of the day, if it's making you angry and making you hate on other people, then you have some stuff you got to work out, because a movie shouldn't do that to you. Positivity, everyone. That's what we're going for, and that's what hopefully my videos convey. Looking for the good and the bad. Even in this one, which is my least favorite Star Wars movie, I still find some good things. Love Darth Maul. Enjoy aspects of the pod race, even if I do think it's a little long. And I love his mom's performance. If only they could have got a better kid to act off of her, it would have been real good. I don't know a single movie that she's in besides this, by the way, so I should probably check that out if I'm going to continue to be such a Pernilla August fan. I love that name too, Pernilla. I believe that's how you say it. Yippee! So Anakin has just realized that he's free. Watto is going to let him go. And then he realizes, wait a second, what does that mean for my mom? Well, she can't go, bro. Sorry. You got to leave her. I always liked her bracelet here in this shot. Shmi has a cool looking armband thing. Yeah, see, like this would be tragic if this happened to somebody. Like, you had to make the choice to pursue a better life for yourself, a better future, and leave the only family that you have. As an actor, like, that's a really high stake. That's a really difficult choice to play, a powerful choice to play. And to put that on the shoulders of a 9-year-old boy, like, I don't think he is at the maturity level yet to understand the weight of that. Sorry, 3PO, you're going to have to stay naked for a while. Hopefully, mom doesn't sell you. I like the way that 3PO looks. There's a positive thing about this movie. His naked look, all the wiring is pretty cool. Yeah. Mm. I would highly encourage you all to check out the other actor that was up for this role. Um, there's not a lot of footage on him. Like, there's like one or two clips where you get to see him read with Natalie, but he knows how to act. And Jake does his best, but I do like this little exchange here where he says, "Will I ever see you again?" And she's basically like, "Well, what do your feelings say?" And he says, "Yes." And I think that is, I mean, that's the Force telling him that, in fact, you will see your mother again. Always in motion is the future. We know this. Yoda has told us this. But we know, because we've seen episode 2, that he does see her again, and it's just under really, really bad circumstances. Oh, also, I forgot to mention earlier with the Anakin theme, you can hear how it just moved into the music here, just moved into like the theme from A New Hope. But John Williams, the master, used some of the Imperial March stuff that was used with Darth Vader, and I forget what he called it. I'm not a composer, so I don't know these things. I have to ask some of my composer friends out in LA. But he kind of like tweaked it. I don't know. The Anakin theme has similarities to the Imperial March. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And that's a nice little thing. All right, so here Darth Maul has finally tracked down the Jedi. Like, where was he during this pod race, bro? Like, you had ample opportunity, Darth Maul, to track down the Jedi. You dropped the ball. You blew it. You had one job. Palpatine would be so mad at you. So, fun little fight scene here on the desert sand. This was cut a little bit. I wonder if maybe they added it in because in the original release, Maul actually jumps up onto the ramp of this starship too. Or I'm sorry, that was cut. Um, and I'm wondering if they added it back in for this version. So here goes Qui-Gon. Does the Darth Maul follow him? No. So this is still like it used to be. But yeah, they originally shot Darth Maul kind of like trying to get up there in the door or whatnot. And here's the big introduction. Meet Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor's just sitting there like, hey, kid, I need more to do. Poor Ewan. I like the little crabby looking thing that Newt Gunray's on. Like, I need one of those for my house. Like a throne that's on top of a crab. Take him away. I do kind of like Newt Gunray. I mean, he's pretty terrible, but terrible in an ironic. I like him in an ironic way. All right, what's going on now? I need to pay attention. I missed most of that between Newt Gunray and the battle droid. Oh, look, Jar Jar sleeping and snoring. It's hilarious. All right, so this friend from Naboo, I don't know what his position is. I know his character's name is C.O. Bibble, but he keeps sending messages to the Starfighter like, hey, we're really suffering here. And you really see that weighing on Padme. That's something that we could have seen gone a little bit further. This is a pretty good exchange in the movie, actually. Jake, this is one of Jake's better scenes. I don't know if it was just like put him in a corner and tell him to act cold, but it really works. And I think this motherly affection that she's giving him this early in the story actually works a lot better than anything romantic. Oh, and here's the necklace thing. So this is something that should have been incorporated more too, because we see at the end of Revenge of the Sith when Padme has died that she still has this necklace, right? I feel like if that was a reoccurring theme, if she continued to fiddle with it while she's worried about him, while he's away. Oh, other people are joining that I haven't even seen. I don't know if you guys are still here, but hi, Andrew and Ben and Robert. Good to have you. All right, so we're finally to Coruscant. Wow, I thought we were going to be on Tatooine forever. So Coruscant was first mentioned in the Heir to the Empire novel by Timothy Zahn. If any of you are friends of the Timothy Zahn novels, that's where Coruscant comes from. Now, that said, George Lucas he created the idea of Coruscant like back when he first wrote the first epic long story of Star Wars in the mid 70s. But we didn't know about it as a public until the 90s with Timothy Zahn. I think George wanted to try to incorporate it in Return of the Jedi, but the technology just wasn't there. So now we see it in a planet filled entirely of a city. Timothy Zahn, yeah, Caleb, for sure. Man, there's a lot of C.S. Lewis stuff I need to catch up on too. Have you read any of Timothy Zahn's stuff? Because the Thrawn trilogy is really good, but I highly recommend the duology that he does afterwards. It's more of Luke and Mara stuff. Ah, okay, the New Zahn stuff. I haven't read any of the New Zahn stuff. Yeah, it's good. Check it out, man. the old stuff. I don't know. I don't foresee myself getting deep into the new books. I don't know. We'll see. I got so much stuff going on watching these movies with you guys. Okay, so this is an interesting scene that got added back in. Anakin kind of not sure where he's supposed to go, right? He looks back at the Jedi. He's like, wait, am I supposed to stay with you? No, Padme says I should come with her. That I think was actually a good addition back in. Helps us to understand Anakin's struggle. I mean, this is culture shock for this kid, right? That we really need to see showcased here. Like he went from a remote desert land to this metropolis and he left his mom. I mean, George, these these are character things that you should be realizing. We need to see his struggle. I mean, he's still in his sand clothes for crying out loud. Get the kid a bath. Ugh. But I digress. All right, here's Ian McDiarmid chewing scenery as Senator Palpatine. Yeah, I recommend the Legend stuff. I haven't read the new Thrawn canon stuff, but certainly Legends. All right, what kind of politics are we talking about here, Palpatine? See, this is what I'm kind of talking about with urgency, pacing. Pacing has been a big problem for George in these trilogies. Uh, you got to find the rhythm of it, and it's not something that can be easily explained. You have to feel it in your gut. And on set here, I think with all these very static shots, with all this sitting blocking that just keeps you stationary, becomes very dull to the viewer. We're talking about politics here, so it's already dull. And of course, at this point, Padme has switched back and is playing the role of the Queen as she's discussing with Palpatine. That's a problem with the decoy plot. The Queen Amidala decoy plot is that we as an audience don't really know when is it the decoy, when is it actually the Queen. I only know because I've watched this a lot and I can tell when it's Natalie's face. But as a general audience, it's silly. Okay, so let's talk about Yoda because originally when this film came out in 1999, it was a puppet version of Yoda. Y'all remember that? Does anybody have a copy of this on VHS? Because I don't think any of the DVD versions have the puppet Yoda. Pretty sure the DVD versions have all switched over to a digital Yoda. Probably for the best. I prefer a puppet Yoda, but since the other two films in the prequel trilogy are fully digital, I like that there's a little bit of consistency with the character among those three movies. Also, the puppet in Phantom Menace, when it was originally done, did not look like the Yoda puppet from Empire and Jedi. Okay, so we're talking about the prophecy. The prophecy that would bring balance and destroy the Sith. This is the first time we've ever heard of this prophecy. Mace Windu says, you believe it's this boy. And thus begins a lot of debate on what is the balance of the Force. Is Anakin the chosen one? Well, George has made it very clear that Anakin is the chosen one because he does kill Darth Sidious at the end of Return of the Jedi. He does. I can hear what you're saying already. You're like, well, he came back for Rise of Skywalker. He's a clone for Rise of Skywalker. JJ knows what he's doing. I'm telling you guys. Stay with me here. Don't hate me. Oh, I'm going to get so much hate when I start talking about how Rise of Skywalker is the best. Okay, this was a pickup shot done. I think that is Natalie still as the Queen there. Yeah, he comes by to be like, yo, I want to say bye to Padme. but that is in fact Padme in the queen costume. So she realizes that he's come to say goodbye. See, that would have been another opportunity for Padme to be like, oh, my heart breaks. I want to reach out to this child and be like, I love you. You're going to be fine. I have faith in you that you're going to grow up and do awesome things. But no, we missed that character moment. Hopefully this is helpful to y'all. I'm just trying to like find all these beats where like with a better script, these characters would have opportunities to really get fleshed out. All right, so we're in the Senate. Everybody's in their hovering donuts. And what kind of politics are we talking about? Okay, Amidala gets the stand. She gets to plead her case before them and be like, no, the Trade Federation is legitimately like invading and killing people, y'all. Quit debating stuff. Natalie does a good job here, despite her robotic performance, which was George, her voice, her emotional investment, I think, really comes through in her eyes. I feel like I'm talking a lot more today than normal, but it's because there's so much to say about this movie. And if that's annoying to you guys and you want to drop out, I totally get it. Or put on your subtitles. That's what I've been doing. All right, so here's little Palpatine whispering in Padme's ear, being like, hey, I got a great idea. I just came up with this. Why don't you convince everybody that we can't trust the Supreme Chancellor anymore? I like that that little yellow camera droid is there too, like giving the video feed to all the other senators in their own little hovering donuts. If you were inside of a hovering donut, what flavor of hovering donut would you want it to be? Oh, I heard a Wookiee. I think you see the ET species in here too somewhere. Yeah, bottom left, bottom left. There's a nice, that's a fun little tidbit. George Lucas literally put a couple of ETs down there yelling. Call it the ET donut. Anyone hunger? I totally spelled that wrong. See, all right, so this is a moment of conflict between Master and Padawan. As an actor, Long John Donut, cream filled. The only way to eat a Long John Donut, right? Um, but yeah, like if there's conflict between those two characters, it needs to be a little bit more intensified. Right now, it just I feel like a lot of the actors aren't fighting for something, and this goes back to George's direction. If Obi-Wan Kenobi really doesn't want Qui-Gon to go against the Council, he needs to come at it a little bit more firm. Really fight for that want. And I'm starting to use a lot of acting language here, but each of these characters, each of these actors have an objective with their character, and they need to be fighting for it. N64 pod racing game is my favorite. Yes, Katie. Oh, that makes me so happy to just see you as a kid playing N64 pod race. I love it. I didn't have an N64, sad day, but I loved Mario Kart on it. All right, I just kept talking over all of Yoda's stuff about fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Gotta have high stakes. Eric, you get it, man. You're an actor as well, so I know you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's the problem. There's not really high stakes here, or there are. They're just not being fought for. Because like Padme in this scene, for example. See you, Caleb. Thanks for dropping in, buddy. Padme is concerned for her people. She's a leader. She's an elected official, and she has a responsibility for her constituents, right? but the actress is not given the opportunity to really fight for that want. Like, I mean, you need to get her on Naboo and get her like in the trenches. I'm thinking it kind of gets to that when she's running around the palace with her blaster, but I'm talking like dirty her up. Don't be afraid to get these characters dirty. So much of this seems very sterile to me, and the original trilogy felt very dirty and lived in. And now we're in this, office, Palpatine's Alpha office. It's this pristine scarlet red carpet. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Padme. You need to return. Return to Naboo. Go fight. They don't know it partially too, I think. Yeah, I see what you say. I see what you're saying, Eric. I think you're probably right about that. See, in this scene, Padme is she's fighting against Palpatine, but she's still stuck in this robotic tone. If George had allowed her to break from that choice, it would have been honestly very effective because the whole movie we see her poised, um, together, and then if when she breaks that, then we know as an audience, oh, something is legit. Anyway, something's going down. Here's Qui-Gon. He is convinced that Anakin is the chosen one. Talk about a lot of pressure on this poor kid there, Qui-Gon. And Yoda's like, nope, too much anger in him. Dirty and passionate. Yes, sir. Agree with that. I'm sorry, guys. My actor side of me is coming out. Except I'm not sorry because I think that's what makes me a better critic. I'm not a screenwriter, I'm not a cinematographer, but I know acting and I can relate to these because these are all really strong actors. Liam Neeson, Samuel L. Jackson, Natalie Portman. These are some of the best Hollywood actors out here. And they're in a bad movie. And there's a reason for that, and it's because of the direction. Love you, George. I know you're watching, George. All right, so Mace Windu's talking about the mystery of the Sith. This digital version of Yoda actually looks a lot better than I thought. One quick thing about Yoda in Last Jedi. This is off topic as far as Phantom Menace goes, but they were able to find the original mold for the puppet from Empire, and that's why the top. But it was modified later in the process of doing Empire Strikes Back puppet. So the top half is correct and the bottom half is not, which is why the Last Jedi Yoda looks kind of cabbage patchy at the bottom half, but the upper half looks like spot on. All right, and here I believe is the midichlorians intro. Stay close to me and you'll be safe. So here's another, opportunity for a character moment. Is Qui-Gon should be taking on kind of the mentor father role here. Anakin hasn't grown up with a father, so he needs to see Qui-Gon as his father figure. So when he loses Qui-Gon at the end of the movie, it creates a bigger impact on him. Symbionts, life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midi-chlorians, life could not exist. I try not to get too upset about this sort of stuff, but like I said before, I think it's best to just leave the Force unexplained. I will say that one thing that George wanted to kind of look at for the sequel trilogy was to delve more into that microscopic universe. Think about that when you guys are complaining about J.J. Abrams movies. I kid, but can you imagine? Like, what would that have looked like, George Lucas? How would you have done a whole movie about microscopic midi chlor? I don't know. Part of me kind of wants to see it. All right, we're back in Naboo. Here we are with the Nemoidians walking around with Sidious. All this stuff was shot in Italy. Oh, by the way, I haven't had anybody ask for a timestamp. I don't know if anybody's actually watching or if you're just watching me ramble. But we are at 1 hour, 37 minutes, and 21 seconds. 1:37:22. So if you want to catch up, we're about an hour and 38 minutes in. And somehow they decided to let Anakin come up to the cockpit while the guy's flying around. No, that's fine. That's cool. Let the kid learn stuff. Oh, one more thing before I move on from Yoda completely. Well, Yoda comes back around at the end of the movie. Oh boy, Jar Jar Binks is needed for assistance. Uh, Frank Oz, who of course is the puppeteer and voice of Yoda, was shown footage of Watto on the set, and he was like, really impressed by it at the time, rightly so. And he says to George, he goes, "See, George, you don't even need me here. You could just do this all digital." And in my head, I was like, "No, Frank, we do need you. You are so good, and I don't like digital characters." All right, so let me catch you up to speed here in case you didn't catch on. But basically, Queen Amidala is like, "Yo, Jar Jar, I think if you go get the Gungans to side with my people, then together we can take down the Trade Federation army." This scene feels new. Guys, I'm pretty sure that was added in too. See, this is the first time I've watched this on Disney Plus, so anything new like that is sticking out like a sore thumb to me. Yeah, I don't think that little character moment was there originally between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. So I like that. Obi-Wan's like, "Hey man, I'm feeling kind of confused about me not being with you anymore." Anyway, just 3 lines. See, you can do a lot with very little amount of time on screen. So Jar Jar is not as annoying here because he's not trying to be funny. That's basically the problem with the character. They created Jar Jar with the sole intent of doing dumb slapstick. And when you are trying to make people laugh, it becomes forced, or at least it did in this case. Like every joke with Jar Jar seems very forced. When he's not trying to be funny, Jar Jar's fine. He's just another character. And in this moment of the film, he actually serves a purpose. He's trying to connect both of these cultures here. So again, all this forest stuff was shot about 15 miles outside of London. Oh, I might take that back though, because they had to build those statues. Okay, and we have switched back to the decoy because here comes the big reveal. Why did they decide to have the handmaiden be the decoy sometimes and not others? I guess since she's coming back to Naboo, makes sense. All right, so here she steps forward and she's like, "Hey, yo, I'm the real queen." William, I'm kind of surprised you're still with us, bro. You watching along? Maybe he left. And now everybody kneels, and Jar Jar's like, this is one joke that's actually kind of funny for Jar Jar. He doesn't know if he's supposed to kneel or not because he is a Gungan. So why? Oh, those CG Gungans, man. Ooh, the final battle is going to be rough to sit through, y'all, because it's going to be CG Gungans versus CG battle droids. Natalie actually, in some interviews, talks about what it was like to act with a bunch of blue screen. Um, and she says that it was pretty difficult because obviously you have to use more of your imagination, which is fine. Like when you're acting on stage, you have to use a lot of your imagination. But the difference is you don't have somebody coming in after the fact and creating a virtual environment. So like in her case, and she even has said this, she was like, it was hard to imagine what George wanted you to imagine. I mean, a lot of times I don't think George knew what he was really going to go for until he was in the editing room. Which, man, Darth Maul's makeup is so good. Um, while I'm talking about editing for just a second, George would see if most directors, if they're on set and blocking isn't working, they'll continue to tweak it, do a few more takes, collaborate with the actors. George doesn't do that. There's a great scene in this documentary where George is literally changing blocking in the editing room because he has the power to do so now with his computer. He's able to move an actor here, move an actor in this way, and Ben Burt, who's sitting right next to him, is sitting there like, "This is dangerous power you've got on your hands, George." And yeah, I think again that just illustrates how his focus was in the wrong spot. You got to start with your characters, you got to start with your story, and then work out from that. You can't start with all of this focus on the digital aspects of it. It doesn't work. All right, so Rick, what's up, my man? I'm doing a real bad job of catching all you guys as you come in, but when I do see you, I'll try to say hi. Saw Rogue One with Rick the very first time. All right, so we're walking through the strategy. Every Star Wars movie has a battle plan scene, it seems, and they get a little tiresome after a while. Padme's got big hair, just like her daughter does in the following movies. Now, speaking of video games, though, if any of you guys did play Star Wars Legos, I remember Phantom Menace stuff a lot of this stuff, because I think it was what you had to play first. Like you had to play it in chronological order. Look at that makeup, Darth Maul's makeup. So all of this stuff, like this was an actual corridor in Italy, right? And there used to be these light fixtures on all these pillars and banisters. So they had to go back through and digitally remove all of these lighting fixtures. And this shot here of the fog and the Gungans walking through, I will always remember was the very first shot of the Phantom Menace trailer. Sticks out in my head and I'll never forget it. And I was always kind of like, what's this? Because we'd never seen any Gungans before. Eric, thanks so much for joining, dude. I really appreciate it. You should stop by next time. Have a good one. Where are we at, by the way? I'll give you all one more timestamp, and that'll probably be all that's needed because we're getting sort of close to the end, 20 minutes or so. So we are at 1 hour, 45 minutes, and 46 seconds. 1:45:49. And here comes the big shield. So George was saying that like he wanted this final battle on the plane to be like epic, grand scale, war and peace. He's actually, there's footage of him like talking to Steven Spielberg, and he's like, yeah, it's going to be like war and peace. And I'm like, okay. But again, it doesn't work because we have robots going off against digital lizards, and there's no emotional connection that we have with any of these parties. So there's a lot going on in this final battle. We've got Anakin going up in space and accidentally doing stuff. We got Padme doing stuff. We got the lightsaber duel, and we got the big battle on the Naboo plains. And we really only care about One or two of those. You hear the Neimoidians watching on their TV screen, like, "Whoa, this is getting really close to the palace." Here come the Jedi's. Guys, the best part of the movie's coming up. One review that somebody gave, I don't know if it's Hollywood Reporter or somebody, but their critique of the film was, it's a pretty good bad movie. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, and there were a lot of people that they wanted to direct it that turned it down. Like Spielberg turned it down, Robert Zemeckis, Ron Howard. Like nobody wanted to pursue it because it was so daunting. And that's the struggle with this franchise is Star Wars right now is like a victim of its own success. Like it's become so huge that it's hard to please anybody. I'm an easy critic, honestly. I mean, I'm not, but I really am. Like I just want very few things. I want good, strong characters and fun aliens and action sequences. That's it. And the Force. But it's hard to please a lot of folks when you have reached this height of popularity. And that's why J.J. Abrams didn't want to direct all three movies. He was originally supposed to just do the one, as you probably remember, because he didn't want to deal with the burden, the stress, the fan base. Jar Jar, look at you. You're being a leader. He's grown up so much. All right, we have this slow, daunting reveal of all these droids. I guess this is George's attempt of like building suspense. But at this point in the movie, I feel like the audience is just kind of like, let's get this thing going. We know who's going to win in the long run, so can we just fast forward to that point? And here come the battle droids. Ouch time. Ba-ba-ba-bum. How good is a shield if like these soldiers can literally just walk through them? Like maybe you need to improve your technology here, Gungans. Jar Jar has already fallen off of his ride. And okay, see, I was trying to compliment Jar Jar, and then all of a sudden he ends up being a doofus again. And why Anakin decides the best place to hide is inside that cockpit, that goes beyond me. I mean, Qui-Gon does tell him to just stay there, so I guess he's just kind of obeying his dad. Right, Dad? I just want you to love me, Dad. All right. So here we get the cool reveal of the horns. We'll handle this. And John Williams' epic Duel of the Fates composition. Everybody takes their robes off. This is the highlight of the film, really. Meanwhile, Anakin's just watching all of this take place because he was told to. And the double blade. As much as I love this fight, it's still a little jarring coming off of, the original trilogy and going to this. I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made that the Jedi, again, are at the height of their skill level, I suppose. But it's just kind of like, whoa, couldn't we ease into this fighting style? Like, couldn't you find a nice in-between point between original trilogy, lightsaber duels, and what we have here in Phantom Menace? All right, so Anakin decides to fire up the old Naboo starfighter, and take out some droids. And Padme's like, okay, cool. Thanks, Bae. I mean, I don't love you like that yet, but I will later. And there she goes. I love too that there's literally just Anakin Starfighter leaving that hangar, and the one tank can't seem to take down the one Starfighter. Oh, this is a great shot here where Maul just throws that block thing onto the door. Ain't got time to push the buttons to open the door. Let's go out here, guys. This fight, okay, so if you watch that documentary or any footage of these three actors rehearsing this thing, dude, you really get an appreciation for the physicality that's going on here, and just the commitment. I love that headbutt that Ewan does, and all these jumps. Somebody was saying that they think Rise of Skywalker has the most jumps in any Star Wars movie, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Phantom Menace might give it a run for its money. All this stuff is tough because I do have a hard time distinguishing what is digital and what is real set. I'm just on autopilot. See, it's like at this point, if you decided to make Anakin 9 years old, he shouldn't be in this part of the movie. They should have just left him at Coruscant. Like, I get why he's here because this is his trilogy, but George, you made him 9 years old. If you had kept him at 12 or 14, then there's more of a reason to bring him to Naboo. And Jar Jar is accidentally being heroic. There's a lot of accidental heroism in this. Jar Jar does things that he doesn't mean to that benefit the Jedi. And of course, Anakin does as well. This is intense, guys! I love that he tells R2 to take him off the autopilot, not to go back to the planet where it's safe, but to fly around and shoot stuff up. Like, does nobody come over like the comm leak and is like, hey, who are you? What are you doing? Oh, I'm a 9-year-old boy. Don't mind me. This is Wizard. Oh no, what is the line? This is pod racing. That one's coming up here sometime soon. I haven't really talked about Captain Panaka at all in this. So that's the name of the main security officer here that's been walking around with Padme. He's a nice little, yeah, he's cool. I don't have any problem with Panaka. He does a fine job. I had the replica of that gun that Padme is holding. I think it had like a game on it too. See, with this movie coming out when I was 13, like that was perfect toy purchasing era for me and like my parents and family. So I have a ton of episode 1 toys. And it's my least favorite movie. So this shot here where Obi-Wan jumps up, there's some pretty fun behind the scene footage of Ewan on a trampoline to get the effect of him jumping. I think he jumps up from that. There it is. Yeah. He's like, and they try a couple different things. They have him on a trampoline. They have him on like a board, and then a crew of like 6 dudes just like lift up the board to get the jumps to look right. See, that's got to be like the 6th or 7th jump now. I still to this day don't really understand like all these laser walls. Like, it almost, is it supposed to be a safe? Does anybody know? I know that most people have tapped out already. But like if there's like a vault situation going on here, then what is at the end of the hallway? Like what is being secured with this vault? It's also an interesting choice to like kill the action. Not something I would have done, George. But it is like this weird moment where they can intimately stare each other down. And Qui-Gon, you see him just meditating. Uh-oh, there go the shields. Not looking too good for these Gungans. And Jar Jar's about to display another act of accidental heroism here. These bombs, I guess they're like a plasma bomb. There's a really hilarious conversation on the documentary of George talking about these bombs with people. Because they're like, so, George, when they land, like, how do they look? He's like, oh, I think they land like a water balloon. Yeah, like a water balloon will explode. And it's hard to convey the humor to you all, but when you're watching it and you're like, if somebody from another planet was listening to this and like trying to figure out what they were talking about, it'd be hilarious. Kind of similar to the original trilogy, there were all these notes being passed back and forth about whether or not Chewbacca should be wearing pants. Like Mark Hamill talks about like this is just ridiculous. Reading through notes and discussions and arguments about should the Wookiee have pants. I love it. They win this round. Has he said that this is pod racing line yet? My wife says she hates that line. I don't know why. It seems. Is this pod racing? Like, is he asking a question? It's not actually pod racing, Anakin. You realize that, don't you? Poor kid. Poor Jake. Fun thing about Ray Park, who plays Darth Maul. Again, I don't know if you all saw my post about him, but I met him in LA, and he is the nicest dude. He was not originally supposed to play this role either. He was just hired to be a stuntman, but he like was a really hard worker. And oh man, Obi-Wan is stuck. So yeah, Ray worked really hard, and he would work one-on-one, I guess, with the stunt coordinator and be on tape. And George eventually saw him on tape and was like, "Whoa, this guy is really good. Let's just cast him in the role." So he got the role, even though he didn't get to do the vocals for it. He got to play Darth Maul. Here it comes. Sad. It is kind of sad to see Qui-Gon go. It would have meant more, though, if we could see Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon really develop this bond throughout the film, though. Bonding scenes. If some of you were watching me earlier as I was giving my commentary on the original trilogy, I was pointing out, ooh, this is a bonding scene. This is another bonding scene. This is something as an actor, I've learned a lot about this in LA training. But we have to see these characters bond, so when something dramatic like this happens, it has a bigger impact on us as a viewer. Anywho, Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor still does a fine job trying to sell it. It's just tough. It's tough to know that it could have been better. Sneaky little decoy. Wait, what? There's two of them? Haha, tricked you guys. I've got my special guns here. She's a pretty good shot. See, I would have liked to see more of Padme doing this sort of stuff. And I think at this point in the movie, changing her costume design to something, obviously this is less formal than her full queen garb, but I'm talking like something super rudimentary for her costume just to give her some more substance as a character, more relatability. All right, Ewan. So yeah, this fight in particular, they worked a lot. It's just pretty quick, but look how fast they're moving. And this isn't sped up at all. Yeah, like I said earlier, though, one thing to change would be Darth Maul's death, which of course we know for people who are fans of the Clone Wars, he comes back. But imagine what episode 2 and 3 could have been like if Maul was there the whole time. If Obi-Wan was continuously pursuing Maul or being pursued by Maul. Uh-oh. Hang in there. Hang in there, Obi-Wan. Do you go by Ben yet? I do love that his lightsaber falls and that he has to use Qui-Gon's. I believe it's Qui-Gon's lightsaber to finish off Maul. How funny would it be if he used the other half of Darth Maul's lightsaber, though? Chopped him in half with his own saber? That would have been kind of funny. All right, and here's the last accidental heroic act by our heroes. I guess you can't call them heroes if they're doing it by accident, or can you? Oh, I forgot to mention earlier about the score. So John Williams' composition for the Duel of the Fates, which is the song that you hear with the lightsaber duel. You hear the chorus singing in the background, right? So that is one of very few moments where there's actual vocals in the soundtrack for a Star Wars movie. And you can pull up the footage of that is really awesome because you have the orchestra laid out below, and then you have this huge chorus of these amazing vocalists, and just the sound quality. And as a singer myself, I'm like amazed by these singers. All right, so look at this droid with the 1138 on the back of his backpack, the one that Jar Jar pushed down. There was a number on the top of his back that was 113 and then an 8. And that, again, is a reference to George Lucas's very first movie ever made, THX 1138. There's a reference to it in the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, as well. All right, Obi-Wan. Grab that saber. This shot's great because you see a little bit of a red hue pop up at the bottom of the screen, which doesn't quite make sense because lightsabers aren't supposed to like draw blood, but I still love that. And Rey, to his credit, gives a really great reaction there when he's chopped in half. Oh, man. And okay, so this is one of the moments where a Force user dies and does not immediately disappear and become one with the Force. If anybody's watching and wants to comment on that, that still is a huge gripe that I have about the Star Wars saga. Is like, why do some of these people? I guess he's not dead yet. He's not dead yet. Little Monty Python reference. He's not dead yet, but we know at the end of the movie that they cremate him. So, like, why does he get burned? Why does Anakin get burned when they die? And other people like Obi-Wan and Luke do not. These are the things I would ask George. What questions would you guys ask George? Think about that. What would you ask George Lucas? There's a little cameo here of the producer and the set or sound designer editor. This is a fun little line. We will watch your career with great interest. Wink, wink. Palpatine, you old slime ball. There's some of the Jedi in the back. But okay, so behind Padme's left shoulder is the sound designer, Ben Burt. And with the big hat right next to him, that is the producer of the film, Rick McCallum. So they both got a little cameo in the movie. This is the first time that we ever got to see Yoda walk. And in the original release in 1999, that was pretty interesting because he was still a puppet. So it was a combination of both puppetry and CGI. Yoda's like, "Hey, you can train Anakin, but I have a really bad feeling about this." Hey, I don't think that line was said in this movie. The reoccurring "I got a bad feeling about this" line. I don't know if that was in this one. Someone on the internet's got it all listed out. I should check it out. Obi-Wan and that braid thing that's never really explained. It's the braid for him is supposed to be like representative of how far through his Jedi training he is. And then at one point you're allowed to cut it off when you've reached a certain spot. But that's never really talked about much in the movies, which is a bit annoying. Okay, so as I was talking about earlier, Qui-Gon is being cremated. For some reason, he didn't become one with the Force. Anakin's confused. Not only has he said goodbye to his mother, he has now lost his father figure. He's probably not really going to see Padme much anymore. Yeah. And here's the first mention of the rule of two. There's always two Sith, a master and an apprentice. Now, that was not always the case. There used to be an entire world of Sith. And this is a nice little shot where it slowly pans to Palpatine's profile. But yeah, the Sith eventually killed each other off and left one Sith Lord, and that was Darth Bane. Some of you are probably very familiar with Darth Bane. And he is the one that established the rule of two. A master and apprentice. What's up, Josh? Interesting observation on who. Yeah. Yeah, the concept that I can think of other than oversight is that they were all living in isolation and communing with the Force. That's a pretty good observation, Josh. Oh, but Leia becomes one with the Force too. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's an oversight personally, but I'm open to a lot of interpretations. And if you reject Rise of Skywalker or whatever, if you're one of those people, then maybe the Leia death doesn't matter so much. But good thought, Josh. All right, so here we are, grand finale. Everybody's on the palace stairs. Even little Anakin is there, and he's got his little Jedi. He had enough time to grow out his hair, apparently. I don't know how much time's transpired here, but he looks more like a mini version of Obi-Wan. And that's it. Woo! We made it. I still have people here. We made it through the first movie of the Phantom Menace. I can't hardly believe it. All right, so just a couple minutes to wrap a few thoughts up, guys. Um, yeah, obviously there's a few problems with it, but again, I enjoy it. Why? Because it's all part of one big story. And George Lucas started that story and he created and imagined this world, and now it allows me to play in it. So I can, make up my own head canon for the things that I don't like. Um, and the things that I do like, I keep in there, that sort of thing. So I love that y'all have joined in, and let's continue to debate Star Wars, and let's do it in a respectful, positive way. We can totally disagree. Like, that is okay. But let's just, make sure we don't get too emotional or hateful about it all. So at the very beginning of this, I posed just a couple questions. What was George trying to do? Did he accomplish it? And why doesn't the movie work? I'm not going to dwell so much on that last question because there's a lot of reasons why the movie didn't work, and you watched most of this with me, so you know what those are. But as far as what was George trying to do, I think he was trying to push the envelope for CGI. He accomplished that. I think he was trying to do something new that didn't repeat what he's done before. For the most part, I think he accomplished that in a lot of ways, because frankly, it doesn't feel a lot like the original trilogy. And lastly, I think George was trying to tell the story of Anakin Skywalker. And that is the main point where I think he failed in this first episode. Because sure, Anakin's in the movie, but he's too young. The character just should have been written a little bit older, and we should have been able to see more of his struggle. The biggest struggle being leaving his mother, the emotional impact that that takes on a kid, and then trying to figure out his place in the new world. We need to see the culture shock that he deals with. We need to see him struggling with the feelings that he has for Padme. And those are just some of the small portion of the issues that I have with the film, and things that I think weren't carefully looked at for his character. All right, so thank you so much for staying online with me, guys. Attack the Clones. I think I'm gonna do a quick turnaround and just knock out the next one Tuesday night. Maybe I'll put a poll up and see if that's too early for people, but we'll see. Thanks again. Stay safe out there, and as always, may the Force be with you.